welcome to this special, very special broadcast coming to you live from the Kargil War Memorial in Drass. This is amongst the most beautiful settings that you can imagine to tribute and honor the Indian soldier. We're at the section of the memorial that's known as the Veer Bhumi. All around me are epitaphs to the Indian soldier. In fact, 316 to be precise, in memory of those soldiers who were killed not just in 1999, but every soldier who has died in the line of duty since 1947. It should be mentioned as we broadcast from the Veer Bhumi tonight from the War Memorial in Drass that while successive governments, up until now of course, dragged their feet on the creation of a national military memorial, this place lost no time. This has been amongst the foremost military memorials in the country, and it is one of the few memorials that is actually at the place of war. And as we said, we are surrounded by epitaph stones in memory of every single soldier who has died in the Kargil sector since 1947. Over the next 60 minutes, this broadcast is in remembrance of a war that took place 15 years ago, a war that shook the country and changed the way we look at our soldiers and at our army. But 15 years later, has the life of the Indian soldier improved? Do we still not accord soldiers the respect they deserve? On this program, you will also hear from disabled soldiers, injured in battle but wounded really by a cold and callous system. But before we bring you that special report, let me introduce our guest tonight on this special broadcast. We're very privileged to have with us here two fathers who have traveled from different parts of the country in memory of their martyred sons. And these two fathers here are united in a sense by the loss that they have experienced. And even if they don't know each other, they'll always have that in common that binds them together. And of course, they're two very, very proud fathers. Let me introduce them. We have T.R. Gogoi here, whose son Jintu Gogoi was only in his 20s. He was a captain when he was martyred here in the Kargil sector. And we have Kishing Peter here, whose son Clifford was also martyred and was also just a young boy of 24 years old. And we'll be hearing from both of you very soon. I'm also joined by my colleague and our senior editor for Strategic Affairs and Defense, Nitin Gokhale, somebody who was also here during the war of 1999. Let's introduce our other guest this evening. From Bangalore tonight, we're joined by Rajiv Chandrasekhar. He's, of course, a member of parliament, but he's also one of the few politicians, and I have to say this, he's one of the few politicians who has tirelessly been an advocate for the rights of soldiers, for the rights of disabled soldiers, an advocate of the National Military Memorial that's about to become a reality. So we're very pleased to have him on the show with us. From Panchkula tonight, we're joined by General Vijay Oberoi. He will talk a little bit about how the war wounded are still having to fight for their basic rights. And we're also very pleased to have with us Major Navdeep Singh. He's a lawyer and a tireless advocate again, especially for the rights of disabled soldiers and the war wounded. But tonight, we begin with a special story. The story of a man who should have been a national icon, who should have been applauded, who should have been celebrated. Instead, the man who is now known as India's Blade Runner, a man who lost his right leg in the war of 1999, has had to run from pillar to post to just get what is his due. Here at the Kargil Memorial in Drass, this moment is all about mourning the loss of those who put country before self in 1999. But it's also about something more, something intangible that is difficult to describe. It's about pride, it's about honor, it's about celebrating the Indian soldier. But today, as we remember those who died in 1999, what of those who survived the war but whose lives were forever changed by the scars and wounds of battle? Today we bring you the story of 40-year-old Major D.P. Singh. His leg had to be amputated in 1999. He was stationed in Akhnur. Since then, he has become one of the country's most preeminent blade runners. But his story is extraordinary for a number of reasons. One, of course, is his own fortitude. But listen then to his harrowing story in his own words of the fight he's had to wage since then for both his dues and his dignity. He's already won the race hands down when it comes to courage and dignity. If you watch Major D.P. Singh's stride and sprint, you would not believe that this magnificent runner lost his right leg during the Kargil War of 1999. He was all of 25 years old when mortar fire from the Pakistani side ripped through his body. At first, DP was declared dead on arrival at the field hospital. When he was revived, the cost was the amputation of his right leg. Now, for somebody like you, for a soldier, to deal with losing your leg, ऐसा लगता होगा कि जिंदगी खत्म हो गई है. कुछ देर के लिए तो लगता ही होगा.
Well, to be very frank with you, I don't know, for me, I feel that it is all God-guided life. Because I take motivation from the first thought which struck me when the amputation news was shared with me. And that perhaps thought was by God gifted only. मैंने ये सोचा था कि this is a new life for me. And this is a new challenge to find out that how people like me live. And perhaps someday I will become I'll do something which will be motivation for people of my type of category people.
So instead of giving up on life, you became, as you are now known as India's Blade Runner. You started running marathons. You wanted to come back to rally sports. How did you find the strength to train yourself for this? How did you find that inner strength?
See, I belong to Sikh religion, right? And Sikh religion is, the history itself says they are, Guru have taught us to be saint and soldier. And a soldier and the type of life they have lived, they have sacrificed the whole family and, everything for the cause of goodness. So, somebody who's coming from that type of a culture, I mean, I just lost a leg, nothing else. So, how can I just, start giving up on life? That's one. Secondly, it's a second life for me. अगर एक बैट्समैन को भी कैच छूट जाता है तो लाइफ लाइन मिलती है, उसके बाद वो कई बार सेंचुरी मार देता है. Why should not I use that life?
DP Singh's heroism should have made him a national icon. Since losing his leg, he's clocked 12 half marathons. We should have decorated him, applauded him, celebrated him. Instead, for the past decade, the young major, now a full-time blade runner and motivational speaker, has had to fight a compassionless bureaucracy, not just for his full pension, but even to be recognized as a war-wounded soldier. Major D.P. Singh was on duty at the Akhnur border on the Jammu side and thus is technically not recognized as being part of the theatre of war. So you found, correct me if I'm wrong, you found that even though you almost died during the Kargil war, जिस तरह से कारगिल को और ऑपरेशन विजय को नोटिफाई किया, they did not recognize you as a Kargil war wounded. ये थोड़ा समझाएं.
देखिए, कारगिल वॉर जो है वो हम जानते हैं आम शब्दों में.
जी.
एक्चुअल में ये ऑपरेशन विजय है.
जी.
और ऑपरेशन विजय का मेन हब जो था, पर जहां पर आप भी गए थे, वो कारगिल, मशको, द्रास, बटालिक और ये सेक्टर था जो सिर्फ 2 आर्मी की डिवीजन से कवर होता था. लेकिन लड़ाई पूरी एलसी पर चल रही थी.
Shelling, RT firing,
everywhere.
Everywhere.
In fact, the area where I was posted is the most difficult area when there is a war. 65-71 war is fought in the Chicken Neck area in the most dreaded way.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about that. तो मैं वहाँ पे इंजर्ड हुआ जहाँ जो कि लाइमलाइट में नहीं था. Now, somebody who is sitting in the air-conditioned office, it is very difficult to find out कि लाइन का डिफरेंस कितना होता है, right? तो वो डिवीजन की लाइन के अगर दूसरी तरफ कोई इंजर्ड हो रहा है तो उसको कैटेगराइज नहीं किया जा रहा है ऑपरेशन विजय कारगिल के तरीके से.
तो यू आर नॉट रिकॉग्नाइज्ड टुडे बाय द कंट्री as a war wounded soldier who who died in Kargil.
वो
Officially.
उसके पीछे कुछ और भी कहानी है.
अच्छा.
I had to go to court to Armed Forces Tribunal to fight out and prove that I am a war casualty, in spite of the fact कि मेरे को mention and dispatches प्रेसिडेंट नोटिफिकेशन खुद आया हुआ है, प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने खुद दिया हुआ है कि ऑपरेशन विजय में आपको मेंशन एंड डिस्पैचेस अवार्ड किया जाता है. उसके बावजूद मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ डिफेंस, सीडीए ने मेरे को जो पेंशन दी वो सिर्फ डिसेबिलिटी पेंशन दी,
नॉट वॉर वुंडेड,
नॉर वॉर इंजरी पेंशन.
डज दैट मेक यू फील टेरेबल?
Well, I feel sad because a young soldier, right, a youngster who is going there, ज्यादातर लोगों की जो जख्मी हुए हैं या जिन्होंने अपनी जान गंवाई है वो यंग ही थे. क्या वो जाने
20s, जो मुझे याद है मैं तब 26 साल की थी, सोल्जर्स वर यंगर देन मी.
सो क्या वो जाने से पहले ये सोचता है कि मैं अपने जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स भर रहा हूं उसमें मैं एड्रेस कौन सा लिखूं, क्योंकि शायद बाद में मैं इंजर्ड हो जाऊंगा या मेरी मौत हो जाएगी तो मेरे पेरेंट्स को या मेरे को जो बेनिफिट मिलेगा वो अलग होगा. क्या डिफेंस मैटर स्टेट का है या सेंटर का है? क्या ये सोल्जर सोचेगा उस समय जाने से पहले कि यार अगर मैं लाइन के उस तरफ जाके लड़ूं तो शायद मेरे को मेडल मिलेगा या कुछ होगा? आई मीन हु द हेल हैव सो मच ऑफ टाइम एंड यू नो थॉट्स? देयर यू आर फाइटिंग विद पैशन, जुनून से फाइट करते हो आप, सोच के नहीं फाइट करते. जिसने सोच लिया वो तो मर गया वहीं. लेकिन ये सब जब सोचा बाहर आगे जब देखने को मिलता है कि आज मैं तो ऑफिसर हूं, you know, उस जवान की क्या हालत है जिसका शायद इतना सोच ही ना हो.
The past decade has been a measure of DP Singh's fortitude and forbearance, but it has also been a chronicle of a shamelessly cold, almost cruel system. The Major's disability was reduced in an unexplained decision from 100% to 90%, reducing the pension he would get. He has spent the last 7 years locked in litigation and chasing files for not just his dues, but also for his basic dignity. आपके जैसे बहुत और भी सोल्जर्स हैं, वो आजकल एमओडी के साथ लड़ाइयों में फंसे हुए हैं, एक ब्यूरोक्रेसी के साथ. एमओडी का क्या रिस्पॉन्स रहा है आपके केस?
एमओडी आर्म्ड फोर्सेस ट्रिब्यूनल ने 2012 में मेरे केस के ऊपर डिसीजन दिया और बोला कि इतने ज्यादा इंजर्ड सोल्जर को आप क्यों धक्के खिला रहे हो, प्लीज रिलीज ऑल द बेनिफिट्स. लेकिन उस ऑर्डर के ऊपर अभी तक इम्प्लीमेंटेशन नहीं हुई है. मैं 2012 में 2 महीने वेट करने के बाद एग्जीक्यूशन ऑफ कोर्ट ऑर्डर के लिए फाइल किया पिटिशन. वो पिटिशन आज 2 साल होने वाले हैं, अभी अगस्त में फिर से हियरिंग है.
क्या कहते हैं वो?
एमओडी चक्कर कटवाता है. उसमें लिखा हुआ है, PS4 डायरेक्टर बोलता है कि एमओडी ने कुछ ऑब्जेक्शन लगाए हैं और शायद उनके कहने पे उन्होंने मेरे को दोबारा चिट्ठियां भेजी हैं कि आप जाके दोबारा से अपना बोर्ड कराइए.
मुझे बताइए ये अमाउंट्स अगर मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूं, ये किस चीज, what amounts are we talking about? Because I have the information that many wounded soldiers बिल्कुल छोटी अमाउंट्स ऑफ मनी पर एमओडी ऐसे धक्के खिलवा रही है.
देखिए पेंशन जो मेरे को आज की डेट में मिल रही है ना, अगर मैं आपको बताऊं तो शायद आप हंसोगे.
बताइए.
मुझे कुल मिला के 14,000 रुपये पेंशन मिल रही है और जो वॉर इंजरी पेंशन होनी चाहिए वो एज ऑफ टुडे, जब मैं रिटायर हुआ था, वॉर इंजरी पेंशन इज एक्चुअली जो जब मैं रिटायर होता है कोई बंदा उस समय जो उसकी लास्ट पे ड्रॉन होती है,
जी,
विच इज मच मोर हायर देन व्हाट आई एम गेटिंग टुडे.
To add insult to injury, 3 different bureaucracies in 3 different states of India refused to help him or his family in the aftermath of the battle injury.
जब मैं इंजर्ड हुआ हूं उस समय मेरे पेरेंट्स ऑलरेडी दिल्ली में रह रहे थे तकरीबन पिछले 10 साल से. अब उन्होंने कहीं पे घर नहीं बनाया. हमारी फाइनेंशियल कंडीशन ऐसी थी कि नहीं बना पाया मेरे पिताजी घर. मैं अपने ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स के पास पढ़ाई करी है रुड़की में. अब जब मैं अकेडमी में था IIM में, वहां पर जो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन होती है वहां पर मैंने ऑब्वियसली जो घर दिया रुड़की का दिया. तो मेरे पिताजी ने दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट को अप्रोच किया क्योंकि वहां पर उनके पास वो रहते हैं, तो तुम स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के पास जाएंगे अगर आपने कुछ फंड इसमें है. उन्होंने रिफ्यूज कर दिया कि आपके जो बच्चे के डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं उसमें वो रुड़की का एड्रेस है जो यूपी में है. जब यूपी गवर्नमेंट को अप्रोच किया तो यूपी गवर्नमेंट बोलती है कि वो तो हमने अब उत्तराखंड बना दिया. उत्तराखंड बनाया 2000 में. मैं इंजर्ड हुआ हूं 15 जुलाई 99 में. उत्तराखंड के पास जाते हैं तो उत्तराखंड बोलता है हम तो नए हैं, हम तो वैसे ही अभी कुछ नहीं रखते, तो क्या देंगे. अब मजे की बात यह है कि क्या मैं उत्तराखंड के लिए लड़ा, या मैं यूपी के लिए लड़ा, या मैं दिल्ली के लिए लड़ा, या मैं अपने देश के लिए लड़ा? किसके लिए लड़ा मैं? मुझे ये समझा दीजिए.
is the question that commemorative anniversaries like this one must force the nation to answer. As we remember those who died, what of those who live on with their war wounds, surviving entirely on extraordinary personal courage, but left at the mercy of a heartless system that rebuffs them instead of respecting them? In Kargil, Barkha for NDTV. So as we saw there in the story of Major D.P. Singh, he may have been injured in war, but his real wounds have come from a cold, callous system. On this special broadcast from the beautiful, stunning War Memorial in Kargil, we're broadcasting tonight from the Veer Bhumi, surrounded by 316 epitaphs to the fallen soldier here in the Kargil sector. Let me quickly introduce our guest tonight again. We're joined by Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Member of Parliament and tireless advocate for the rights of the soldier. We're joined by Ajay Prasad, former Defence Secretary. Much of the anger, as we saw in that report, that soldiers feel is actually with the Ministry of Defence and with bureaucrats. We're joined by General Vijay Oberoi, who's been a wounded war veteran himself. We're joined by Major Navdeep Singh, who has been a lawyer for the rights of disabled soldiers. Here with me at the Veer Bhumi are these two fathers. Their faces stoic, immense courage. It's been 15 years since both of them lost their sons in Kargil. And also with me here is my colleague Nitin Gokhale. And just this image of the two fathers here, we have T.R. Gogoi and we have Keshing Peter. And I don't even know if you all know each other, and we'll hear from you in a moment, but I do know that your journey here is united by this tale of loss. But first, let's talk about what we saw in the story of D.P. Singh. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, you are somebody who has constantly intervened for the rights of the wounded soldier, for the rights of the disabled soldier. When you hear Major D.P. Singh today, a blade runner, a motivational speaker, saying for the last 7 years, I've had to fight from pillar to post. What are your thoughts 15 years after Kargil? How much has really changed for the Indian soldier?
So thank you, Barkha, for having me tonight. And the story of Major D.P. Singh is obviously one very inspiring story. But I have unfortunately had the misfortune of hearing and seeing many stories like that, where brave, soldiers of honor with great dignity have to go and pay, in some sense, an obeisance to the Ministry of Defence and continue to fight for what is really legitimately theirs, and being kicked around by this very insensitive, uncaring, unfeeling, I hate to say bureaucracy, but bureaucracy it is, and having to suffer this. And then, the question that Major Singh asks is a legitimate question. What did I fight for? What did I do this for? And then, you have to see this again and again. And earlier in January, if you remember, Barkha, the Ministry of Defence had actually issued an order that said all decisions of the tribunal must be automatically be appealed to the Supreme Court. And that was, the last straw that broke the camel's back in a way. And we finally moved the Defence Minister to change that decision.
Yeah. And Rajiv, would you blame, when you say the bureaucracy it is, why do you think the bureaucracy is so unempathetic to the plight of the soldier?
This is a mystery to me, Barkha. I just don't understand it, because I don't understand where this lack of empathy comes from. When the rest of the country is moved by a story like Major D.P. Singh and countless other soldiers, it boggles my mind on why somebody sitting in Ministry of Defence, the only difference between him and me is that he's a babu sitting behind a desk, and he then starts quoting the rule book and makes these people go from pillar to post for what is legitimately due to them. It is one of those mysteries that I have not, after many, many years, been able to crack.
let me take this now to Ajay Prasad. Ajay Prasad, you're hearing what Rajiv Chandrasekhar is saying, and he's making the point that the bureaucracy is in the end completely cold, completely unfeeling, not moved in the same way that the rest of us are. You heard about DP Singh running from pillar to post. You've heard about all the different cases that the Ministry of Defence has over the years dragged disabled soldiers to court for small amounts of pension. How do you defend this response of the bureaucracy, Mr. Prasad?
No, I don't defend it at all. And I think it's very shameful the way our soldiers have been treated. And in this particular case of Major DP Singh, which you highlighted, I think it saddens all of us to hear that even after he got the orders from the tribunal, for 2 years nothing has been done in his case. I just don't understand why that is so. Firstly, he should not have no reason to go to the tribunal to get his rightful dues. And
Yes.
I think it's a systematic failure somewhere, and absolutely I have no defense to offer for that.
But that's very honest of you, Ajay Prasad. But if you say that you do not defend it, where is the systemic failure? Is it in the attitude of the civilian bureaucracy to the soldier? Is it the way we have set up, a maze of red tape? What is it exactly?
No, you see, in this particular, let me again take Major DP Singh's case as an example which you have brought out today. Now, the problem stems from the fact that he was wounded in the Akhnur sector, which strictly speaking was not part of the Operation Vijay. Now, the army headquarters itself had, when they created this scheme about the welfare of the Kargil martyrs as well as people who were injured in those operations, drew the line as to
Yes.
which sectors would be covered under this. Unfortunately, Major DP Singh, though injured in enemy action, strictly speaking did not fall under that category. Now, but again,
But
I
it's very
say
demoralizing, sir.
that
It's very demoralizing
yes,
for the
I
soldier.
agree.
I mean,
I
a mortar
agree with
fire
you.
is a mortar fire from the Pakistani side, and it happened in 1999.
I agree with you, and therefore I feel that both the army headquarters as well as the Ministry of Defence should have taken a broader view of the matter and covered these kind of cases which strictly didn't fall
Okay.
into the category of Kargil, but were sustained injuries as part of enemy action and should have got his dues.
But sir, to interrupt you, this story is not just about him not being recognized as a war wounded. It's also about the fact that when he went to successive bureaucracies in 3 different state governments, Delhi, Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh, he was told by all the babus there that aap hamare nahi hai, aap dusri jagah jaiye. I want to bring in General Vijay Oberoi into this. General Oberoi, as somebody who struggled with this as a war wounded veteran yourself, what would you say has changed 15 years after Kargil, not just for the war wounded but for the soldier in general? What has changed and what has still not changed?
I think, Barkha, the reason is basically, which nobody wants to talk about, they want to shift the blame, is the callousness of the bureaucracy. At the time of independence, the bureaucracy changed from what it used to be earlier, and their attitude continues to be the same against the soldier. Whether it is a disabled person, whether it is a war widow, whether it is their pension, whether their allowances, everything is file bound and is surrounded by bureaucracies, and therefore nothing happens.
Yes.
And one reason, the basic
that's
reason
very well said.
is, and maybe the ex-defense secretary, Mr. Ajay Prasad, would be able to answer me. How many of the progeny of the bureaucrats have joined the services? As far as I know, nil. If this is the case,
I
if
think that's-
this is the way people are going to
Yes.
handle soldiers who are there for the security and safety of the nation, of all the citizens of this country, then I don't see a future for this. And let me just also add that the bureaucracy has unfortunately abrogated the powers of the elected representatives. And I'm sorry to say that our elected representatives have allowed this to happen. Such a pity. Such a grave
I think it's a very
pity
good point. Sir, I'm
that
going to interrupt you
soldiers
because
who
I want
fight,
Rajiv to come in on
soldiers
that.
who shed their blood.
Yes.
And Barkha, you are today standing
Yes.
on hallowed ground where a lot of blood has been split
Yes.
of the soldiers,
Yes.
of the young officers who
Yes.
laid down their lives
Yes.
for the honor of the country, for the honor of the regiment.
Yes, sir.
And don't please ever
Yes, sir.
put the Ministry of Defence and Army headquarters or other service headquarters in the same frame. It is the Ministry of Defence, and we have a stupid
Yes.
department called the Department of Ex-Servicemen Welfare. Welfare? They don't know about welfare. And I think since you have Navdeep on this thing, he will be able to tell you
Yes.
what has happened. And let me say,
Sir, but
that my
sir,
heart
but sir,
goes out
sorry, 1 minute, sir.
not only to DP,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
but also to everybody else who is every
Yes, sir.
Jawan who is in the villages, who doesn't even have a voice like we have.
Okay, sir. Sir, you know, you made so many passionate and important points. Before I get Navdeep, I want to take this back to Rajiv. Rajiv, that's extremely acerbic but true point made by General Oberoi. Rajiv, if you can hear me, the point that General Oberoi is making, that the political establishment has, in a sense, ceded the space to the bureaucracy.
No, I agree
General,
completely.
Rajiv, go ahead.
I mean, I agree completely with General Oberoi. I think if at the end of the day, the responsibility of the conduct of the Ministry of Defence, the attitude and the culture is really incumbent on the minister. And if the political leadership is quite tuned out and quite, let's say, neutral to this sort of attitude of the bureaucracy will do what they will do.
Yes.
So I think there is a strong point there that these kind of issues of sentiment and honor must emerge from the political leadership. If they don't signal that to the bureaucracy, that we want honor to be respected, sacrifice to be respected, the bureaucrats will do what they do, which is flip the book and quote a rule.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And let's get Navdeep in. Navdeep, you have been fighting the cases for so many disabled soldiers. There's one statistic that actually shows that 90% of the cases that the Ministry of Defence has in courts are actually challenging the pension claims by the war wounded. Navdeep, what have you discovered in all your work all these years when it comes to our war wounded?
Barkha, that's absolutely right. In fact, 90% of the appeals filed by the Ministry of Defence in the Supreme Court are against their own disabled soldiers. A very sad state of affairs, and India must be the only country with such a statistic. Firstly, the rules are unfair. Then there is a literal interpretation of those rules. People are forced to go to courts, into litigation, and once disability benefits are granted by tribunals or the high courts, then the Ministry of Defence appeals in every single case to the Supreme Court. You were asking about the figure involved. Well, the figure involved for a Jawan with a 20% disability is only 702 rupees. And most of the cases just involve a few thousand rupees, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000.
Are you saying the MOD is going to court over 700 rupees,
for a Jawan.
1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees?
Yes,
shameful.
yes,
Shameful.
and imagine...
Absolutely shameful.
And imagine, for example, the income tax department does not go to the Supreme Court unless the amount involved is 25 lakh or more. And here we have the MOD which goes into appeal to the Supreme Court for 702 rupees, 1,000 rupees, 2,000. And imagine the plight of the family which receives a notice from the Supreme Court. The entire family is devastated. Can they afford litigation in the Supreme Court? They are just dragging them from pillar to post to court. And the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister has expressed his intentions of withdrawing such litigation, of minimizing appeals, but nothing seems to be working with the Ministry of Defence. It's business as usual. Even the new team of law officers of the new government in the Supreme Court, they're filing multiple en masse appeals against disabled soldiers. It's a sad, pathetic state of affairs, administrative egotism at its very worst.
you know, I think it's shameful for a country, and especially as General Oberoi said, we are at hallowed grounds tonight, and you know, I'm actually just going to allow our cameras to give you a sense of where we are. Beyond, in the distance, the lights are a bit dim now, but you can see the Tolo Link peak that's actually lit up. That's right behind in the distance. That was, of course, one of the many peaks that was taken by the Pakistani intruders at the time of the war and reclaimed by our brave soldiers. Also, of course, as we've been saying, we are surrounded here by 316 epitaphs to the fallen soldier. It's worth remembering that till the BJP government actually cleared the National Military Memorial, for 30 years, we've had successive governments dragging their feet on a national memorial. Now it's finally looking like it's going to become a reality. But when you look at this beautiful memorial, you have to ask why this couldn't have been done earlier. And Navdeep, the figures you have shared, that the MOD is going to court over figures of 700 rupees, 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, absolutely shameful. I'm going to come back to our panel, but it's time now to talk to our two fathers and also to talk a little bit to Nitin. And as I said, the two fathers here, you have something in common. I first must ask you, do you both know each other at all? Do you know Jintu? Do you know Kishing?
No, I don't know him.
Mr. Gogoi, do you know Mr. Kishing Peter?
No, only I know after the death of our sons.
Yes.
So is this the first time you have met?
No,
No.
we have met earlier also.
But only after the war.
Yeah.
You didn't know each other before.
Yes.
So as I said that, you know, you're strangers who got united, and perhaps a bond has been formed by so many parents of martyrs who have come here. Mr. Gogoi, tell me about how you and your family have coped with the loss of Jintu. He was only in his 20s. He was a captain. He was killed. How do you cope with it? And you've heard our guest talk tonight. Do you believe that the Indian soldier gets the respect that they deserve from this country, from the bureaucracy, from the civilians? What do you feel, sir?
Well, we are very proud of my son because he has laid down his life for the country.
Yes, sir.
And since early childhood, he was very eager to join in the army, and finally he has joined after completion of his MSW.
Yes.
And I am very proud to say that he was in 17 Garhwal Rifles, and Garhwali he has picked up within 3 months' time.
Yes.
And that is one of the reasons that he is loved by all the Garhwali
and you know,
units.
at the time that Jintu was in Kargil, the Ulfa in Assam was actually saying that the Assamese people should back the Pakistanis, and your son showed, of course, otherwise. I want to ask you, do you believe the soldier is remembered only in times of crisis?
No, it is actually in Assam also soldiers are being remembered in all the way.
Yeah.
If you happen to go to Nagaland or Dimapur side, there is a war memorial of World War
Yes.
II.
But what has been the struggle like to...
This alpha point, what is you are talking about, that is, I don't want to elaborate more because that is being always fed with the government.
Okay.
So,
now let me get Mr. Peter in. Mr. Peter, you actually made a personal pilgrimage to the exact peak where your son was killed. In I think 2009 or 2010?
2009.
2009.
Yes.
You climbed all the way to the top?
It was 2011 only I could reach the top.
How many attempts did you make?
I attempted 3 to 4 times.
3 to 4 times?
Yes.
Was it very difficult? You must have felt breathless?
It was really...
You're not even a 4G background, so you wouldn't have even been trained for that.
Yeah, the oxygen is very less there. If we go 2 steps, 3 steps, then we feel tired and I have to sit for a while. And
Why
then
was it so important for you to go to this
I
place where your son was martyred?
I really wanted to see the place where he sacrificed for the country, and
You said to somebody, my life will be a failure if I can't reach that place.
Oh, it will. I feel that if I can go and see the place, it will be a success for me.
Now tell me, you've had to face some of the struggle that many of our families of our martyrs have had to face. For example, you had to wait for 4 years just to get a petrol pump that was assigned to you off the ground. What was the attitude of the people who were holding up your projects? What did you face? Did you find they didn't care, they were unhelpful? What did you face?
Initially, I was very unhappy.
Yes.
Because during 1999, the government of India had declared that all those who were sacrificed during the war will get petrol pump.
Yes.
And I was waiting, and during this award, the award of Mahavir Chakra, I came to Delhi, and I met the defense minister also.
And what did he say?
And he said, yes, there are some procedures, and it is a bit delay, but you will be informed. So,
but it took 4 years. Did you feel angry and frustrated? Did you feel that your son's memory was not being honored in the way that it should have been?
Initially I was very angry.
Yes.
So I was waiting for about 4 years, and I couldn't wait. And people say that if you do not meet, if you do not approach, it will be lapse. So you will not get.
Can I ask you, do you feel a soldier gets the respect he deserves?
Yeah,
Or only in times of war and crisis?
he should get.
But he doesn't get today?
He got, of course, during the time. And
But all the soldiers, the young soldiers today, what would be your message to them?
Actually, young soldiers, they should try to keep up the image of the Indian Army. And my son was really for that.
Okay. Okay, now, like I said, you're two very brave fathers, and you yourself personally in 2011 went to the top of the peak, never saying no, and that's the spirit that drives the army. Nitin, talk a little bit about the figures we've heard from Navdeep and what you've heard General Oberoi say, that it is squarely the bureaucracy's fault what happens with our soldiers.
Well, certainly, I mean, I deal with it on a day-to-day basis. When you see there's this Department of Ex-Servicemen Welfare, they file these cases. When you are drawing up the 7th Pay Commission or 6th Pay Commission for the armed forces or for the central government forces, there has been a demand for a long time that the peculiar conditions of the armed forces is not understood by a civilian. So there should be a member of the armed forces on the Pay Commission, for instance. They don't agree to that. They just overrule all the chiefs. Look at the small issue called the non-functional upgrade, which means the Group A service officers are actually much higher in their grade much earlier than the armed forces officials. For instance, a Major General with 33 years service is equated to a Group A service officer who's got barely 18 or 19 years of service.
Yes.
And that creates functional problems in the commands, in the field.
But you heard Ajay Prasad saying this is not, he's not trying to defend the bureaucracy, he says it's a systemic failure.
Certainly, but who does the system, who makes the system? It's the bureaucrat, because ultimately, for instance, in our acquisition of purchases, the recommendation is done by the armed service headquarters, but the ultimate signature on the contract is of the bureaucrat, or the final decision is of the bureaucrat of the Defence Acquisition Council.
Yes.
And I take Rajiv Chandrasekhar's point that it is when they say civilian control or civilian supremacy, instead of the civilian supremacy of the political executive, which is elected representatives,
it becomes the
becomes
civilian supremacy of
the bureaucracy.
Let me take that to Ajay Prasad after hearing from these two wonderful fathers, one from Meghalaya, one from Assam. Ajay Prasad, you know, I guess you're in a minority on this program because it's your service in a sense that's facing the most hostility. But Nitin has a valid point that who makes up the system? It is the Babus. And look at the figures we've heard from Navdeep that the MOD is going to court against our disabled soldiers for 700 rupees, for 1,000 rupees, for 2,000 rupees. What do you say, Mr. Prasad?
Now, I am absolutely shocked to hear this, that this is now what is happening. And there's no reason why these should be appealed in the Supreme Court, these cases. And I think a reform is immediately required to be carried out. That and you know, in most cases, in fact, the rule should be that we don't appeal these cases unless there are some very, very strong reasons for doing so. Rather than make it an non-appeal an exception, it should be the other way around. And I think this is something that needs to be done. Now the new government has talked about it, and I hope it will be implemented at the earliest.
Let me get Rajiv in on that. Rajiv, as Navdeep said, the Prime Minister has made a comment saying that all of these cases should be withdrawn. But Navdeep and General Oberoi feels that with the ministry at the bureaucratic level, not the political level, it's business as usual. So this civilian supremacy that should have been of that of the political executive has actually gone to the Babu.
No, that's true. I mean, I think, Nitin mentioned this issue of pay commission. The three service chiefs made a very impassioned plea to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and he, at the recommendation of his bureaucrats, turned it down for service representation in the pay commission. So I actually don't like this cop-out of blaming the bureaucrats. I completely believe the political executive is responsible for the government's conduct, attitude towards the uniformed soldier and their families, and we should not allow them to wriggle out of this. This is about the political leadership, and if Mr. Jaitley is the defense minister now, he should step up to the plate and say, yes, I have agreed to do a veterans commission. The veterans commission should be empowered to solve all of these problems that face veterans, disabled, war wounded and families, and he should step up to the plate and do what is right.
Absolutely. And of course, at some point, we will also need a full-time defense minister. I think that's a very important point. Rajiv, would you agree that we need a full-time defense minister? Mr. Jaitley is overburdened with too much work.
No, I don't want to comment on Mr. Jaitley's ability to handle two big portfolios, but I genuinely believe from both the national security point of view and the state of our armed forces and the veterans, we definitely need a full-time, it is a full-time job, and I think a full-time job of the MOD requires a full-time minister.
General Oberoi, what's the one thing that you think needs to change immediately? You've said this useless department called ex-servicemen welfare. Why do you find it useless, sir?
They've done nothing. They have been in existence for the last 7 or 8 years. 6 secretaries have rotated and done 0. Now, if you form a department, it is not because you want to settle a couple of bureaucrats who have no other place to go. It is because they do their job. They have done nothing except the only thing they have done, and I must commend them for it, is to take everybody's cases to the Supreme Court. The lawyers are very happy. The government is very happy. No money has to be paid to anybody. So everyone is enjoying himself except the poor soldier, the man who fights for the nation, who gives his blood for the nation, who gets disabled, who gets killed on the battlefield. Why is nobody looking after him?
Yes.
And I'll tell you the reason. The points made, very good points made by our Member of Parliament. It will only be solved not just by the commissions. Commissions are of course absolutely necessary. But it is that the military must be moved into the policy formulation loop. Why are we outside the government? I don't understand it. And unless the armed forces come into the military loop, nothing will get solved. And the bureaucrats will have a headache.
I think that's a very important point, that to have actually a say in decision making. Navdeep, would you agree? Would that change the attitude? It would break the civilian versus military battle. Give us a sense of how many cases, for example, are pending by the MOD against soldiers in court today, Navdeep? Thousands, 1,000, 2,000, how many?
First, I would like to, firstly, I would like to endorse what General Oberoi is saying. There is no say of the stakeholders in the decision-making process in the Ministry of Defence. And ruthlessly what is happening is that instead of the decisions taken by the top percolating to the bottom, what is happening is that decisions are being taken on file by undersecretaries and section officers, file notings are prepared, and those are affirmed and endorsed right up to the top without any application of mind. So what happens ultimately is that the sadistic and negative file notings move from bottom, just go to the top, and the competent authority just signs them. There is no application of mind, zero, zilch. And as far as the number of cases is concerned, there are about thousands of cases in pipeline, including being filed by the new government, despite the fact that the BJP manifesto itself says that appeals would be minimized, and the Prime Minister himself expressing his intention that such cases should not be there. And not just the civilian bureaucracy,
sorry,
even the military bureaucracy is to be blamed to a certain extent for being too timid
it's an important point.
For not taking a stand for their own soldiers.
Okay, quick last word from Rajiv, and then I'll get last comments from my guests here. Rajiv, very quickly, this whole demand, and it's come from many generals down the line, you have to give us a say in policy. You know, it's of course we're not Pakistan, we're India, our elected government is supreme, but give us a voice in the system when it comes to decision making. We have to be part of government. Do you agree with that, Rajiv?
Of course I agree with it, Barka. Look, I mean, you look around you in Delhi, who knows best about war and security? It is the people who do this for a profession. It is the uniformed generals and the armed forces that know best. It cannot be the case of any IAS officer who just moved from agriculture to defense or from education to defense, that he knows more about defense than a general or an admiral or an air chief. There is clearly a conspiracy to keep the uniformed personnel, the uniform leadership out of reach from the political leadership. And why so? I don't know. I think this is a deep insecurity within some of these IAS officers that they don't want the political executive to directly deal with the uniformed leadership. I think it is good for the country if this kind of linkage and relationship starts. It's healthy for our security. It is healthy for everything going forward.
All right, important points there. I hope somebody is listening as we commemorate 15 years of the Kargil War. I'm going to thank Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Ajay Prasad, General Oberoi and Navdeep Singh. Thank you so much for joining us in this special broadcast. We're broadcasting live tonight from the Kargil Memorial in Drass. Nitin, let me get last thoughts from you. What's the one thing you think this new government needs to change on a priority basis?
I think instead of one, I'll say three. One, give the soldiers a dignity by giving cutting out the bureaucratic red tapeism that is there in both pensions and pay. Second, I think the Prime Minister must meet the service chiefs alone, one-on-one, once a month at least, which I believe has just started that system, which was not there for the last 10 years, because he must get that input from service chiefs, as Rajiv Chandrasekhar said. And the third, that the soldiers' welfare must be above everything else in this country. Because it is the soldier, as we sit here in this Kargil War Memorial in Drass, that the soldier protects us all from all the attacks or possible attacks that come from the arch rivals or the enemies. So he must be given the highest dignity, respect and welfare measures. You know,
the sanctity of this place, I think we need to visually show it. If our cameras can actually give you a perspective, a wider perspective of where we are. Maybe you don't get a sense of it when you look at our individual frames, but let's have one of our cameras give a wider perspective of where we are, a longer shot if we can. A longer shot if we can. We can, as we said, we are surrounded here. We are surrounded here by 316 epitaphs to the fallen soldier. And as we sit here and debate these subjects, for those families who actually lose their loved ones, this loss is personal. It's not academic. It's personal. As I said, there are two fathers here who've lost their young sons in their 20s. I want to end with a personal memory for both of you of your sons. T.R. Gogoi, your memory of Jintu, how you like to remember him. कैसे याद करते हैं आप?
He was very energetic and as a matter of fact a very social worker everywhere, and to keep the name and fame of his works, army is doing a lot, and state government also has given, you must be knowing, he has been honored with Beat Chilarai Bota 2007.
So today, are you both proud and sad? The sadness can never go away, can it?
Sadness can never go.
Yes.
But this is where we are sitting, as you are telling, that really the dead soldiers are honored by the living soldiers.
Yes. And actually only soldiers honor soldiers, as some will say. Peter,
yes.
Your memory of your son?
He was really active, and also during his service time, he came home and he wanted to motivate the students to join in the Indian Army, and he made a beautiful note, and he was very much concerned about shortage of officers in Indian Army.
That's a very important point. 8,000 more than 8,000 officers shortfall. We'll be discussing that tomorrow.
Yes.
Sadness can't go, but proud fathers today?
Yes.
Proud?
I'm very proud of his sacrifice for the country.
Well, you know, both of you also are tributes to you because you have also shown such stoicism, such courage, such dignity. And that is a dignity that unfortunately our bureaucracy, our government, our system does not accord our soldiers. So as we commemorate, you want one word? Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Govind?
On 12th of this July,
Yes.
I was called to this Maharashtra, that is Jalgaon.
Yes.
They have
Started something there?
They have this and Kargil Vijay Diwas. They have.
So that's what I want to say. That many more places that people care about the soldiers, but the system doesn't accord them the dignity that soldiers deserve. And as we commemorate 15 years of the Kargil War, those are the questions we should be asking. We have to go beyond lip service in remembering, and not just remembering, but respecting the Indian soldier. From the entire Buck Stops Here team on the ground, from the Veer Bhumi at the Kargil Memorial, thanks for watching. And remember, as we end tonight, the Indian flag. The Indian flag, can one of our cameras pick that flag up? The Indian flag is flying high, proud and safe. And the reason it is able to do that is because of, among others, the 316 soldiers whose epitaphs we are surrounded by here. Good night and thanks for watching.